Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And we have a bit of an unusual situation where most Scots are actually agreeing with Rishi Sunak rather than with the SNP. Seems weird, but it is at least on one particular policy. Now, when Rishi became Prime Minister, despite nobody actually wanting it, he inherited a ban on sales of cars from 2030. This is at the behest of Carrie Johnson, who was then the Prime Minister. Obviously, Boris was in name, but she had him by the balls and he was doing whatever she wanted. And so this ban came in at 2030. And then Rishi said, actually, now that he's Prime Minister, it's not achievable, and we're going to push it back to 2035. And a recent poll has shown that most Scots agree with him. Although the Saturday girl, Mairi McAllan, says, no, we want it at 2030 because reasons. Nobody can actually come up with the good reasons because there's no way you're going to have infrastructure in place in the next 6 and a bit years. It just isn't going to happen. And indeed, it probably won't happen by 2035 either. It's too big. Certainly, you don't have the generating capacity yet, and the entire grid will need to be upgraded. So don't be holding your breath. And also, don't be rushing out to buy an electric car just yet. They are starting already to run a bit low on lithium. So we'll take a look at this to see why Rishi Sunak is on the right side of history for once. Here goes. Scots back Rishi Sunak's petrol and diesel car ban delay in humiliation for the SNP, who called it a betrayal. But there is a little aside on this, which I'll come to in a second. Anyway, the Saturday girl reckoned the move put the UK on the wrong side of history. But she must also believe that the majority of Scots are wrong as well, because the vast majority of them say it's a stupid idea to do it by 2030. Some indeed think it's a stupid idea in total. I am agreeing with that because it is. We haven't got the infrastructure there and not likely to have. Waste of time. Anyway, Rishi Sunak has once again shown himself to be more in tune with the Scottish public than the SNP, after a poll showed voters back him in delaying a ban on new petrol and diesel cars. An SNP minister would call the move a betrayal, but suggests less than a quarter of Scots agree with that. Now, she's saying it's a betrayal, but this is the party, the SNP, who are totally in tune with the EU. Look, we want to be part of the EU, blah, blah, blah. All the EU bollocks that they keep spouting. The fact is, it's only Boris Johnson's wife who wanted 2030, which was why it was brought in. The EU are doing 2035. So surely if the SNP are in tune with the EU as strongly as they are, they'll be quite happy with the 2035 date. But apparently not, because they don't know anything, do they? They're all morons. Anyway, a ban on the sale of new petrol and diesel cars was due to be implemented in 2030 as the UK moves towards net zero, which is of course a load of rubbish, totally unachievable, and would mean that basically we closed down the country entirely, we all went off and lived somewhere else, and even then it would make zero difference. But the Prime Minister delayed it until 2035 amid the cost of living crisis as he ditches pledges on the environment to help people prepare for the move away from fossil fuels, which won't happen in my lifetime. Well, it can't. I've got a lifetime supply of coal. Hey ho. Anyway, at this time, Mairi McAllan, the Nationalist Government's Cabinet Secretary for Transport, Infrastructure, Connectivity and brushing the floor of a hairdresser's on a Saturday morning. No. At the time, Mairi McAllan, the Nationalist Government's Cabinet Secretary and Saturday girl, called this delay an unforgivable betrayal of current and future generations. But she doesn't know what she's talking about. Certainly, she's got no idea about what the current generating power of the UK is, nor does she understand the actual problems in moving high current a long way on ageing infrastructure. As soon as she can explain how that works, then maybe we'll give her a bit of credence. Until then, I think the best thing to do is to let the adults in the room have a conversation and let the children just play in the corner. Give her a set of colouring books and crayons. That'll keep her occupied, won't it? According to Savanta, polling for The Sun on Sunday, 56% of Scots backed the delay compared with just 24% against it. Taking away those who didn't know, it's 70% of those who expressed an opinion were on the side of the government because they're not stupid. They know it doesn't work. You know you haven't got the infrastructure. You've got to remember there's a large part of Scotland which has got bugger all in it. What are you going to do? Dig up the beautiful parts of Scotland just to lay all these heavy duty cables in to get the infrastructure there. So every 100 miles, 50 miles, whatever it'll be. You have huge charging stations. And you have to build 300,000 charging stations just to make sure that the cars can stay charged. Powered, of course, by gas, because you have to burn the gas to generate the electricity. Do you see the difference in problems here? Joined up thinking. Anyway, the number back in the move rose to 67% in rural areas, where communities are more reliant on their vehicles, while SNP voters backed the move with 47% of SNP voters backing it and only 33% against. It follows similar polling that showed Scots also backed Mr Sunak when it came to the exploration of the North Sea oil and gas, because again, they like having, jobs, an economy, a future for their children, as opposed to the Greens, who want utter economic devastation. Where will Mairi McAllan be buying all her shit when the world is falling apart and nobody can make anything because all the factories are closed, because everyone has got to rely on unicorn farts to power the machines? Dearie me. She'd have to go and buy a new broom, wouldn't she? Scottish Conservative MSP Douglas Lumsden said Scots, including the SNP's own supporters, are clearly on board with the Prime Minister's sensible and pragmatic approach to net zero. Don't be surprised, of course, if it gets pushed back to 2040, then 2045, then 2050. Repeat as necessary until the £1 trillion has been spent building 36 nuclear reactors, upgrading the national grid and putting in 300,000 chargers, plus all the step-down stations that will be needed as well. It's not going to be good, and it isn't going to be cheap, and it isn't going to happen anytime soon. Savanta Director Chris Hopkins said, the public will always tend to side with decisions that save them money in the immediate term, and despite that, the Saturday Girl has reacted with anger to the delay, which was announced in September, along with the weakening of the plans to phase out gas boilers by 2035. Because you can't. Because gas boilers are the only things that heat homes, especially older homes, or homes that happen to be in, I don't know, cold climates like Scotland. This is the trouble. You're having lunatics and children making decisions based on things they absolutely know nothing about. What is Mairi McAllan qualified at? It certainly isn't energy distribution, is it? She said, we've always been clear that the delivery of Scotland's climate ambition is contingent on action by the UK government. We did the numbers yesterday, didn't we? Was it yesterday or Friday? Whatever it was, last couple of days. And we said that of the 0.04% of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, Britain as a whole contributes less than 1% of that. Not 1% of, not 1% of what's in the air. Of the 0.04, they represent 1%. That's the whole of Britain. The whole of Britain is less than 1% of that 0.04. It's there. You take Scotland, who then present about 10%, about 10% of that. So you've got 10% of 1% of 0.04%, and that's the whole of Scotland, including industry. And all they're talking about doing is the houses, which in themselves represent such a tiny, tiny proportion of that. It's immeasurably small. And yet they want people to spend hundreds of billions of pounds to be cold, to have high power bills, to do nothing. This is why we cannot allow people like Mairi McAllan, the Saturday Girl, the girl that knows nothing about nothing, to be making decisions that will affect generations to come, achieve nothing except misery, poverty, old people dying of hypothermia, and will benefit the earth not one dot. If you truly want to do something, China. Stop buying Chinese shit. Anyway, a Scottish Government spokesman said, powers to ban sales of petrol and diesel cars are reserved to Westminster. Our approach is about a blend of incentivisation and infrastructure to ensure electric vehicles are the buyer's natural choice by 2030. Good luck with that. Scotland, you need 100,000 chargers. How many have you got? 12. So, good luck. Also, the only way you're going to power these is to put massive pylons across the whole of Scotland. And we're talking the beautiful bits. That's not good, is it? It's not good. To do what? To make no difference whatsoever. Coming up. Now, I know in my heart Mary McAllan thinks she's on the side of angels. She thinks she's doing the right thing. But of course the trouble is she's really rather stupid and she doesn't understand anything. She doesn't understand the problems. She doesn't understand the infrastructure. And she certainly is only mouthing the mantra of others better vested in lies. It's not as though they're her ideas, is it? She certainly couldn't have come up with this. And for what? If you actually got her into a studio, put her in front of an interviewer and asked her, what is the contribution Scottish cars and homes make to atmospheric CO2? She couldn't answer that question. She just couldn't. And then ask her, when you present her with the fact that it would be 0.0000001%, ask her what difference it makes in the grand scheme of things. And she couldn't answer that either. I had to count, it is 7 zeros. It is that small. And yet, for Mary McAllan, it's life and death and the world's falling apart. Here's the thing, Mary. If you were truly concerned about the climate, why don't you just ban private jets from landing in Scotland? Go on. That's something that is within your government's power. You can tax them. You say, if you can't ban them, you can tax them. You say, every time a private jet lands or takes off, £10,000 in tax. They have to pay before they get the clearance to take off. There you go. Problem solved. You can use all that £10,000 on all those private jets to plant trees. Maybe replace the 16 million trees you cut down to put the bird choppers up. All those animals dead. All that environmental area just decimated. Just think. All those creatures living there for thousands of years just ripped up. Their habitats taken away so that you can put a bird chopper up. That's not very good for the environment, is it, Mary? But then, of course, not very bright. I shall stop there. Thank you very much for watching. I'm just appalled that people like this are given any kind of power. It's sad. It's wrong. They should at least be qualified in something. Saturday girls, eh? Till next time, stay safe. Stay well. And if you do get your hair cut, just keep an eye out. See who's actually sweeping up in the barbers. Might be her. Bye.